It wasn't the winter chill that stung me that morning. It was the number printed in bold across the top of the envelope. $38 400 balance due. 10 years. 10 years of overtime shifts, of patching my boots with duct tape, of eating soup from a can while my son studied at a school I thought would change his life. 10 years of wiring money without a second thought. And now this, an unpaid debt as if none of it had ever happened. That's how the story begins. Not with pride, but with betrayal sealed in a white envelope. If you've ever worked your hands raw just to give your kids a better chance, if you've ever sacrificed quietly while everyone else celebrated loudly, you'll understand why I have to tell this story. And if you know that feeling, I'd be grateful if you liked this video, subscribed to the channel, and shared your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. The envelope lay on the kitchen table beside my cold coffee. My hand smelled faintly of motor oil from the garage where I still picked up shifts at 62. My knees ached from years of crouching under cars, but none of that hurt as much as the words in front of me. I whispered to myself, but he graduated. The memory came rushing back, the cap and gown, the staged photos, the smile that never seemed to reach his eyes. I had framed that picture, hung it in the living room beside his mother's cross-stitch. For years, it was proof that every sacrifice had been worth it. Yet now the doubt was a stone in my stomach. If the loan wasn't paid, did he ever really graduate? I told myself it must be a clerical error, maybe the bank had mixed up accounts. But each page bore my name, my address, my signature. The truth pressed harder with every sheet I turned. I walked into the living room and stared at the photo. My son in a maroon gown, holding a rolled diploma like it was a sword. I remembered sitting in the bleachers that day, the sun in my eyes, the names read too quickly. I never saw the diploma handed to him. Just the smile afterward, the way families do when they need proof more than memory. And then I remembered the frame on our wall had always been empty. He'd said the real certificate would arrive later. It never did. I sat back down at the table. The clock ticked too loudly. Outside, neighborhood kids laughed on their way to school. Mine had once sounded the same. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, but another voice whispered, "You've been lied to before. Don't dismiss this so quickly." I pulled out the folder where I'd kept all the receipts. 10 years of payments stacked like gravestones, nearly $90,000 in total. Enough to fix the roof, buy a new truck, maybe even visit my brother in Arizona, but I hadn't done any of that. I had eaten peanut butter sandwiches so he could have a future, or so I thought. The table felt cold under my palms. My chest tightened. I looked at my phone, at his name, Michael, 32 now, across town, living well. We spoke on Sundays about football, about how tired he was. He never mentioned tuition, never mentioned loans, never mentioned debt. I didn't call, not yet. I wasn't ready. Instead, I opened my laptop and searched for the university registrar. I typed a short message. "Can you confirm that Michael Flores graduated in 2015? Signed, Dennis Flores." My finger hovered over the send button. Sending it meant I was willing to know the truth, and truth can't be unsent. I stared at the clock until it struck 3, then clicked. The confirmation wouldn't come until later, but in my gut I already knew. A father's bones know. I closed the laptop and leaned back. The furnace rattled, the house creaked, my body echoed both. Before the envelope, I was a proud, if tired, father. After the envelope, I was a man holding a match near the fuse of his own family. I whispered into the silence, the envelope still open on the table. "Michael, what have you done?" The morning after the envelope, I woke before the alarm. My house felt colder than usual, though the thermostat read the same. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was the way doubt clings to you once it's let in. I poured myself coffee and walked into the living room. The picture frame was still there, centered on the wall where I'd placed it years ago. My son in cap and gown, tassel hanging neatly, his smile faint. Every parent has a picture like that, one you look at when you need proof that all the late nights, all the sacrifices were worth it. For me, that photo had been everything. Proof I'd raised him right. Proof his mother's death hadn't left him broken. Proof our family still had a future. I remembered that day clearer than most. The long drive to campus. The way I'd polished my old boots the night before, not because anyone would notice, but because it felt right to show respect. His mother had always said, "Dennis, dignity is in the details." I'd carried that with me. The stadium was packed. Families cheered, balloons bobbed, horns blared. I'd never seen so many proud parents in one place. I sat alone, but my heart felt full. I can still see him walking across the stage, or maybe I only think I saw it. I know his name was called. I know I clapped until my palms stung. But when I try to picture the exact moment, diploma in hand, I come up empty. It's a blur. What I remember most is afterward in the parking lot when he posed in the rented gown, the smile, the diploma roll just paper inside. "They'll mail the real one," he told me, and I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I had worked 2 jobs by then, one in the shop, one at the warehouse. Nights I came home so tired I fell asleep in the truck before I could get out. My body ached in ways I couldn't explain to a doctor because I never went. All my extra money, every spare dollar, went to that tuition. The university never called me, never asked me for more. I assumed everything was fine. Standing there now, in the quiet of my living room, that pride felt hollow. It was like touching wood only to realize it was painted plastic. The memory I'd leaned on for years no longer held weight. I carried the frame to the table and set it next to the envelope. 2 truths staring at me, the proud father I had been and the fool I might be now. I thought of his mother, Maria. She never got to see that graduation. Cancer had taken her before he finished his 2nd year. She'd made me promise on one of her last nights that he would finish school. I remember holding her hand and saying yes. That promise had kept me going when my body screamed to stop. That promise had been the reason I'd signed every check, wired every transfer. Now I wondered if I had kept the promise at all, or if I'd just been feeding a lie. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Short, casual. "Hey Dad, hope you're good. Can you help cover some fees? Grad program stuff, just temporary." I stared at the screen. Grad program, my throat tightened. I read the message again and again, and something about it didn't sit right. The name of the program was misspelled, a letter missing, sloppy. Universities don't make mistakes like that. I typed back slowly, "Of course, son, let's talk this weekend." I sent it before I could change my mind. The truth is, I wasn't agreeing. I was buying time. I stood and walked to the cabinet where Maria's photo rested. I spoke softly so only she could hear. "Something isn't right, I need to know." The rest of the day dragged. I worked at the shop, but my mind wasn't on the cars. Each engine sounded the same, a background hum to the louder noise in my head. Doubt, suspicion, a father's ache. When I came home, the house felt emptier than usual. I cooked a frozen meal, barely tasted it, and sat with the laptop open in front of me. I reread the message I had sent to the registrar. No reply yet. My inbox was a blank wall, so I did what I'd promised myself I wouldn't. I searched his name online. The university's alumni page came up first. I typed Michael Flores into the search bar. No results. Maybe I spelled it wrong. I tried again. Nothing. My pulse quickened. I clicked away, checked social media. His profiles were filled with photos from trips, dinners, new gadgets. Smiles wide, cocktails in hand, friends tagging him at places I'd never afford. Europe, Miami, Napa. In one photo he stood beside a rental car more expensive than the house I lived in. And there in the corner of the photo a caption, "Celebrating freedom. Thanks, Dad." My hands shook. Freedom from what? From honesty, from responsibility. I printed the picture, set it beside the envelope in the frame. 3 artifacts now. The father's pride, the bank's warning, the son's celebration. I thought about calling him then, but the words caught in my throat. I didn't want to accuse without proof. I wanted answers, not denials, so I waited. At midnight, my phone buzzed again. A message from him. "Did you get my text? Need to know soon." I didn't reply. Instead, I turned off the phone and walked to the window. Snow had begun to fall, light and silent, coating the street in white. I pressed my forehead to the glass and wondered how many more promises I'd have to break before I could finally stop being the proud father and start being the honest one. That night I dreamed of Maria. She was sitting at our old kitchen table, sunlight streaming through the window. She looked at me the way she used to when I came home late, exhausted but alive. She asked, "Is he all right?" I wanted to say yes, but no words came out. I woke with tears on my pillow. The next morning I checked my email before I even made coffee. There it was, a reply from the registrar's office. Just a few lines, polite, professional. "We have no record of a Michael Flores graduating in 2015. Please confirm spelling or student ID." I read it 3 times. My chest tightened until I thought I'd break. I printed it and added it to the pile. The proud father in me tried to argue. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe he graduated under a different name or there was a clerical error. But the voice of reason had grown louder. I knew then, this wasn't about a simple debt. This was about a decade of lies. And the proud father in me was about to become something else entirely. The registrar's email printed on plain white paper sat on my kitchen table like a verdict. No record, 10 years of payments and not a single page of recognition. I stared at it until the words blurred. I didn't call Michael right away. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But a father's instinct is complicated. Confront too soon and you risk hearing what you're not ready to. Stay quiet and you suffer in silence. Somewhere between those two choices lies survival. So I went on with my day as if nothing had happened. I mowed the patchy lawn, tightened a loose hinge on the back gate, and fixed the kitchen light Maria used to complain about. But even as I hammered nails and twisted screws, my mind was elsewhere, on that email, on the photo in the cap and gown, on the envelope. By late afternoon, my phone buzzed with another message from him. This time longer, filled with the kind of urgency I'd heard before when he needed help. "Dad, I'm short on tuition for my grad program. It's just one payment and I'll cover the rest. Can you send $500 by Friday?" I read it twice, maybe 3 times. Grad program, the words burned. At first glance it looked convincing, polite, respectful, even careful. But then I saw it. The slip. The name of the program was misspelled. A single letter out of place. Small enough that most people wouldn't notice, but I noticed. Universities don't make mistakes like that. Students might. Desperate sons inventing stories definitely might. My heart pounded as I scrolled back through our old messages. Requests for fees, books, short-term loans. Always vague, never receipts. I'd never questioned it before. I just trusted him. But now, with the registrar's denial still fresh in my mind, each message read like another brick in a wall of deception. I sat down heavily in my chair. The house creaked in the evening wind, and for the first time in years I felt like I was living inside a stranger's home. Every picture on the wall, every holiday memory, every sacrifice I'd made, they all looked different now, as if someone had switched the frames while I wasn't watching. I wanted to call him right then and demand answers, but something held me back. A voice I hadn't heard in a long time, Maria's voice, telling me to wait. "Patience, Dennis. People reveal themselves if you let them talk long enough." So I decided to let him talk. I typed back, "Of course, son. Let's meet this weekend. We'll figure it out together." His reply was instant. "Thanks, Dad. Knew I could count on you." Count on me. The words cut. That night sleep refused to come. I sat at the kitchen table with the lights dim, staring at the pile, the envelope, the graduation photo, the printed email. Artifacts of a story that didn't add up. I thought about the years I'd worked extra shifts, about the vacations I'd skipped, about the way my friends teased me for never buying anything new. "You're too generous," they'd said. "Kids should figure it out themselves." I'd smiled then, proud to be the exception. Proud to be the father who carried the load so his son wouldn't have to. But what if that pride had been built on lies? Around midnight, I opened my laptop and began searching. Social media, old posts, tagged photos. It was all there, hiding in plain sight. Pictures of Michael with friends at clubs, traveling abroad, wearing clothes I couldn't pronounce. Captions filled with words like freedom and living large. I clicked through them one by one, my chest tightening with every new discovery. In one photo, he stood outside a luxury car, champagne in hand, smiling like the world owed him nothing. In another, he posed in front of the Eiffel Tower. The comments were full of admiration, friends calling him lucky, successful, inspiring. None of them knew where the money had come from. None of them knew what it had cost. I screenshot the images, each one a nail in the coffin of denial. Then I printed them, adding them to the growing pile on the table. The artifacts were turning into evidence. By 2 in the morning, my house looked less like a home and more like a crime board. Paper spread across the table, taped notes with dates and numbers, receipts stacked high. It was as if I was preparing for trial. In a way, I was. I leaned back in my chair and rubbed my eyes. My body ached with exhaustion, but my mind raced. I remembered something my brother once told me: trust is like glass. Once it breaks, you can glue it back together, but the cracks never disappear. I didn't want cracks, I wanted the truth. The next morning, I woke with a plan. I would meet him this weekend, just as I'd promised. But this time, I wouldn't come empty-handed. I would bring the envelope, the registrar's email, the screenshots. I would lay them in front of him and wait. No accusations, no shouting, just evidence. Let him explain if he could. But even as I rehearsed it in my mind, another part of me hesitated. What if he lied again? What if he looked me in the eye and told me stories smoother than any receipt? Could I handle that? Could I survive hearing my son choose lies over love again? The weight of it pressed on me all day. At work, I stripped bolts and forgot where I put my wrench. My boss asked if I was all right. I lied, said I was just tired. On the drive home, I passed the old high school football field where Michael had played quarterback. I remembered cheering from the stands, Maria wrapped in a blanket beside me, our hands numb from the cold but our hearts warm with pride. That pride had carried me for decades. It had given me strength to work through pain, to keep giving, to keep believing. But now I wasn't sure what I carried anymore. That evening, I sat on the porch with a glass of water, watching the sun dip behind the rooftops. Kids rode their bikes down the street, shouting and laughing. I wondered how many of their parents were quietly sacrificing, how many were emptying their savings, how many believed in futures that might never come true. My phone buzzed again. A new message from him. "Hey Dad, just checking. You're good for Friday, right?" I stared at it for a long time, then typed back, "Yes. We'll talk then." I didn't add what I was thinking, and this time I won't be fooled. Inside, the pile of evidence waited on the table. The envelope, the email, the screenshots, the frame. Proof that the proud father I had been was slipping away. The house was silent as I locked the door for the night. But in that silence, I felt the storm gathering. Because on Friday, I wasn't meeting my son. I was meeting my accuser, my betrayer, my child who had turned my love into his credit line. And I intended to find out why. Friday couldn't come fast enough. I carried the envelope, the screenshots, the registrar's email, all of it stacked in a neat folder on the passenger seat of my truck. My hands gripped the wheel tighter than usual as I pulled into the university parking lot. The campus looked just as it had years ago. Wide lawns, red brick buildings, students crossing with earbuds and backpacks slung low. For a moment, I felt proud again, remembering the day I first dropped Michael off. He'd waved from the steps of the dorm, eyes bright, shoulders squared like he was stepping into a new life. But that memory soured as I parked, because now I wasn't here to celebrate him. I was here to fact-check him. Inside, the registrar's office smelled faintly of toner and carpet glue. A young woman behind the counter looked up and smiled politely. "Can I help you?" I cleared my throat. "Yes, my name is Dennis Flores. My son attended here, Michael Flores. Graduated in 2015, I thought. I just need to confirm." She tapped her keyboard. The clicks echoed louder than they should have. Then she frowned. "Can you spell the last name again?" I did. She tried twice, maybe 3 times. Finally, she said, "I'm sorry, sir. We don't have any record of a student by that name graduating in 2015. Are you sure about the year?" My chest tightened. "I'm sure," I said, though my voice shook. She offered, "If you can provide a student ID, I can run a deeper check." But of course, I didn't have one. I'd never asked for it. Why would I? I trusted my son. She gave me a card with her email and said she'd look again if I could provide more details. I thanked her, slid the card into my folder, and walked out into the bright sunlight. The air felt sharp, like a blade against my lungs. I sat on a bench near the library and watched students hurry by, laughing, juggling books and laptops, their whole lives still ahead of them. I should have felt happy for them. Instead, I felt cheated. For 10 years, I had been paying tuition for a ghost. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Michael's name. My thumb hovered there. I wanted to call, to shout, to demand the truth right now, but something stopped me. If I went in blind, he'd twist it, charm me, talk circles until I doubted myself. He'd done it before. No, I thought, not this time. This time I'd be ready. So I did something I never imagined I would. I stopped by the financial aid office. A middle-aged clerk met me at the counter. I explained my situation in a low voice, careful not to sound like an accuser, more like a confused father. He listened, nodded slowly, and pulled up a screen. "I can't disclose student details," he said carefully, "but I can tell you this. If someone has been paying without a valid student account attached, the money would default into a holding account until claimed. If it hasn't been claimed, it should have been refunded." Refunded. My stomach dropped. I'd never received a single dollar back, which meant the payments hadn't gone through the school at all. I asked, "Is it possible someone gave me fake account information?" He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "It happens more often than people think. Parents get convinced to send payments to outside accounts. Scams, family disputes. I'm sorry, sir." Outside, the world tilted. Fake account information. Had my own son really done that? I walked back to my truck, folder clutched to my chest like armor. I sat behind the wheel for a long time, staring at nothing. The pieces were falling together in ways I didn't want them to. The envelope, the email, the misspelled text, the photos online. Now this. The truth was no longer a shadow. It was standing in front of me, asking me if I had the courage to look it in the eye. I drove home slowly, every street familiar yet suddenly foreign. The house greeted me with silence, the kind that feels heavier than noise. I laid the folder on the table and spread out the documents. One by one, the evidence looked back at me. Unpaid balance, no graduation record, screenshots of champagne bottles and European trips, the registrar's card. My son had not only lied about graduating, he'd been funneling my money somewhere else. But where? That night, as I sat in the dim kitchen, I couldn't shake the image of him as a boy. He used to sit at this very table with his math homework, tapping his pencil against the wood. He'd ask, "Dad, how do you solve this?" And I'd lean over, patient, steady, proud. That boy was gone. In his place stood a man I barely recognized. And still he was my son. That truth was heavier than all the evidence combined. The clock struck midnight. I poured myself another cup of coffee and whispered into the dark, "Maria, I don't know what to do." The phone buzzed on the table. Another message from him. "Don't forget Friday, need the money by then." I didn't reply. Instead, I looked at the folder. Friday wouldn't be about sending money. Friday would be about revealing truth. I pictured the moment, laying out the documents, watching his face. Would he deny it? Would he break? Would he beg? The thought both terrified and steadied me. Because this time the proud father wasn't coming to rescue his son. This time he was coming to expose him. Friday crept closer like a storm cloud you can't outrun. I had my folder of evidence ready, each page stacked in perfect order, but part of me still wondered if I was wrong. What if there was some explanation? What if he'd simply misspelled a word in that text, and all this suspicion was nothing but my own paranoia? That fragile hope shattered the night I opened his social media. I wasn't snooping for fun. I wanted to know what he was really doing with his time if he wasn't in class. I typed his name into the search bar, hit enter, and there he was, smiling wide, drink in hand, city lights blazing behind him. Photo after photo scrolled down the screen. First, a weekend trip to Miami tagged at a rooftop bar I'd only ever seen in movies. Then a week later, standing beside a Tesla with a caption, "Work hard, play harder. Work hard." My throat tightened. In Paris, he posed in front of the Eiffel Tower, arms stretched like he owned the city. In another, he lounged on a white sand beach, sunglasses gleaming, cocktail balanced beside him. Friends flooded the comments, "Killing it, man. You're living the dream." Yes, he was living the dream on my money. I clicked one video. He was at a nightclub, champagne bottles sparking with fireworks as waiters carried them through the crowd. His voice shouted over the music, "To freedom." Everyone around him cheered. Freedom, that word again. I slammed the laptop shut, heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my chest. For 10 years I had eaten canned beans, patched my roof with tar, and told myself it was temporary. I believed my sacrifice was building his future. And here he was, burning it all away in neon lights and hotel suites. I got up, paced the kitchen, ran my hands through my thinning hair. Rage burned hot in my veins, but beneath it was something colder, grief. Grief for the boy I thought I raised. I forced myself to sit back down and reopen the laptop. This time I took screenshots. Every trip, every car, every drink he flaunted. I printed them one by one, paper sliding out of the printer like evidence at a trial. I laid them beside the envelope, the registrar's card, the letter that started it all. By the time I finished, the table looked like a crime scene. Each picture a wound, each receipt a scar. I stared at the pile until my vision blurred. I wanted to call him right then, to scream through the phone, to demand how he could betray me like this. But I didn't. Not yet, because Maria's voice still echoed in my head. "Be patient, Dennis. Let him reveal himself." And he did. The next day, another message buzzed on my phone. "Dad, remember Friday? I'll stop by for the money. Appreciate you always having my back." Always having my back. The words twisted like a knife. I typed nothing. Instead, I slipped the newest screenshots into the folder. The weight of it grew heavier, not just in paper but in meaning. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the porch watching the neighborhood kids chase each other under streetlights. Their laughter rose into the night, pure and careless. I thought about when Michael was their age, running down this same street, grass stains on his jeans, ice cream dripping down his chin. Back then, I would have given anything to protect him. I did give everything. Now I wondered if I had protected him too much, shielded him from the real world until he believed money fell from the sky, until he thought lies could replace hard work. The thought gnawed at me. Maybe this wasn't just his failure. Maybe it was mine. The porch light flickered, the same one I'd been meaning to replace for years. I laughed bitterly. I hadn't fixed it because every spare dollar had gone to him. Even the smallest corners of my life bore the mark of sacrifice. Inside, the folder waited on the table. Friday was coming. The showdown I never wanted but could no longer avoid. Still, a part of me clung to hope. Maybe he'd confess. Maybe he'd look me in the eye and admit the truth, beg forgiveness. I could live with that. Forgiveness was possible even now, but only with the truth. The night stretched on. I poured myself a glass of water, then whiskey, then nothing. My thoughts circled endlessly. The email, the photos, the lies. Over and over until dawn broke pale through the curtains. When Friday arrived, I was ready. The folder sat in my briefcase, every page in order. I dressed in my best shirt, ironed and tucked, not for him but for me. Dignity in the details, Maria had said. I stood by the window, waiting. His car pulled into the driveway, music thumping faintly from the speakers. He stepped out, phone in hand, sunglasses perched on his head though the sky was cloudy. He walked to the door with the easy confidence of someone who had never worried about rent, never feared a bill, never sacrificed a meal. I opened the door. He smiled, casual. "Hey, Dad, you got it." I looked at him, my son, my blood, and felt the folder heavy in my hand. "Come in," I said. The door clicked shut behind him. He walked into the house like he owned it, my house. The same one I'd patched and painted with my own hands. He tossed his keys on the counter, slid his sunglasses up onto his head and said almost lazily, "So, Dad, you got it." I didn't answer. Instead, I nodded toward the table where my briefcase sat waiting. The air in the room felt thicker than usual, heavy with the smell of old wood and the faint trace of coffee grounds. "Sit down," I told him. He looked at me, puzzled, then shrugged and dropped into the chair across from mine. He leaned back, casual, like this was just another favor he was here to collect. I opened the briefcase slowly, letting the silence stretch until I knew he could feel it too. From inside, I pulled the first page, the envelope. I slid it across the table. "Recognize this?" He frowned. "What is it?" "Open it." He unfolded the letter, scanned the numbers, then set it down with a shrug. "So what? Everyone's got loans." My jaw tightened. "Everyone doesn't have a father who's been paying them for 10 years. He shifted uncomfortably but forced a laugh. "Dad, it's complicated. Don't worry, I got it under control." "Do you?" I reached into the briefcase again, pulled out the registrar's email and laid it flat between us. "Because according to this, you never graduated. Not in 2015, not ever." His face changed. Not guilt, not shame, just irritation, like I'd inconvenienced him. "Why would you even check that?" "Because I needed the truth," I said, voice steady, "after a decade of lies." He leaned forward, lowering his voice as if the walls had ears. "Dad, look, you don't understand how these things work. I needed the money for other things, investments." "Investments?" I pulled out the stack of screenshots, each one sharper than the last: Paris, Miami, champagne, cars. I fanned them across the table like a dealer in a casino. "These." His eyes flicked across the images. For a moment, just a flicker, I saw something break in his expression, but he masked it quickly, leaning back in his chair, crossing his arms. "So I enjoyed myself a little. Everyone does." I shook my head. "Not on their father's back." The silence stretched between us. Outside, a dog barked in the distance, the ordinary sound of an ordinary neighborhood. Inside, nothing was ordinary. Finally, I said, "Michael, do you know what I gave up for you? Do you even remember?" He rolled his eyes, an old teenage habit. "Dad, don't start." "I worked double shifts. I sold Mom's car after she died because I couldn't afford to keep it. I went without vacations, without new clothes, without fixing this house. I kept every promise I made to you, to your mother. And what did you do? You took it and turned it into parties and hotel rooms." His voice sharpened. "So what if I did? I didn't ask you to give up everything. You chose that." The words hit me like a slap. I sat there, stunned, while he leaned back as if he'd finally won an argument. "You chose it," he repeated, quieter this time, almost smug. I let the silence hang, then spoke slowly. "You're right. I did choose. I chose to believe in you. I chose to honor your mother's last wish. I chose to trust my own son. That was my mistake." For the first time, his confidence faltered. He looked down at the table, at the papers spread like evidence in a courtroom. His fingers drummed nervously against the wood. "Dad, I can fix this," he said finally. "I'll pay you back. You can't pay back years, Michael. You can't pay back your mother's sacrifice. Money's gone, time's gone, what's left is respect, and right now you don't have mine." He looked up, eyes flashing with anger. "So what, you're just gonna cut me off after everything?" I held his gaze. "I'm not cutting you off. You cut yourself off the moment you chose lies over love." The words settled heavy in the room. He swallowed hard, his bravado slipping. For the first time I saw fear in his eyes. "Dad," his voice cracked, softer now, "please don't do this. I need you." I closed the briefcase slowly, the click echoing like a verdict. "You needed me when you were a boy. Now you need the truth. This weekend you'll have it. We're not done here, Michael, not yet." His brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" I stood, walked to the window, looked out at the fading daylight. "Sunday dinner, be here, no excuses, bring your wife if you want. I'm setting the table one last time." He frowned deeper. "What's that supposed to mean?" I turned back to him, my face steady. "It means the truth is coming out whether you're ready for it or not." He stood abruptly, grabbing his keys. "This is crazy." "Crazy," I said quietly, "is a father working himself to the bone while his son drinks champagne in Paris." He stopped at the door, turned halfway. His voice was low, almost a growl. "You'll regret this, Dad." The door slammed behind him. The house fell silent again. I walked back to the table, gathered the papers, and placed them neatly back in the briefcase. My hands shook, not from fear but from the weight of what was coming. Because Sunday dinner wasn't going to be a meal. It was going to be a reckoning. Sunday came with a gray sky and a restless wind that rattled the old windows of my house. I woke early, too early, the way you do before a hard day. My hands already knew what they were meant to do: set the table. Not with food. There would be no roast, no mashed potatoes, no laughter. The table was for evidence. I laid it out carefully, one piece at a time: the envelope of debt, the registrar's denial, the screenshots of beaches and nightclubs. Each page slid into place like a card in a hand I could no longer fold. At the center, the graduation photo, his smile framed in maroon, empty diploma roll clutched tight. A picture that once gave me pride now sat like a cruel joke. By noon, everything was ready. The house smelled faintly of polish from the furniture spray I'd used earlier. It felt right to clean. Maria would have wanted it that way, dignity in the details. The hours dragged. I paced the living room, checked the clock too many times, stared out the window. When his car finally pulled into the driveway, my heart jolted as if I were about to face a stranger. Michael stepped out first, phone in hand, his wife trailing behind in a coat that probably cost more than my truck. She glanced at the house with thinly veiled disdain. I saw it and felt no anger, only confirmation. They entered without knocking. He looked around, smirked faintly. "So, Dad, what's this about dinner? Smells like you didn't cook." "I set the table," I said simply. They followed me into the dining room. His wife froze first. Her eyes darted over the spread of papers, her mouth tightening. Michael frowned, confused, until realization hit. "What is this?" he asked sharply. "The truth," I said. I gestured for them to sit. They didn't, so I began. I picked up the envelope, tapped it once. 10 years of payments, every month, every sacrifice. And yet the debt still stands. I placed the registrar's email beside it. No record of graduation, not in 2015, not in any year. I spread the screenshots one by one, my voice calm but steady. Miami, Paris, cars, clubs, freedom, all of it bought with the money I thought was going to your future. His wife's face flushed crimson. "You showed him," she hissed at Michael. He snapped back. "He's exaggerating." I raised a hand. Exaggeration is a father bragging about his son's touchdown. Exaggeration is adding a few inches to the size of a fish you caught. This, I tapped the papers, is proof. Michael's jaw tightened. He leaned forward, palms flat on the table. "So what, Dad? You wanted me to live like you. Grease under my nails, hands cracked open every winter. You gave me money, I used it. That's life." His words were sharper than knives, but I didn't flinch. I looked him in the eyes and said quietly, "No, that's theft." The silence that followed was heavier than stone. His wife shifted uncomfortably, muttering something about not having to sit here and be judged. I turned to her. "You knew, didn't you? Maybe not every detail, but you knew where the money came from. You wore it, you drank it, you flaunted it." Her lips pressed thin, no denial, only disdain. Michael broke first. "Dad, please, I can fix this. I'll find a way to pay you back." I shook my head slowly. "You can't repay years, son. You can't give me back your mother's dying wish, the promise I kept for her, the pride I carried for a graduation that never happened. You can't give me back the nights I worked while my knees screamed, or the mornings I skipped breakfast so I could afford yours. What's gone is gone." His eyes darted between me and the papers. For the first time, I saw the boy inside the man, the boy who once looked to me for answers at this same table. His voice cracked. "Dad, I didn't mean to hurt you." I leaned forward. "Intentions don't pay debts, Michael. Choices do, and your choices brought us here." He buried his face in his hands. His wife touched his shoulder, but he shrugged her off. I stood and walked to the mantel where Maria's photo rested. I picked it up, held it so he could see. "Do you remember what she asked me before she died? She wanted you to finish school. She wanted me to promise. I did. I kept it. I thought you did too, but you lied to both of us." Tears welled in his eyes. I was scared. After she died, I couldn't keep up. I dropped out. And I didn't know how to tell you, so I made it up. I thought if you believed I was fine, you'd be okay. The confession fell into the room like a stone into water. The ripples reached everywhere. I closed my eyes, let the weight of it sink in. When I opened them again, my voice was steady. You didn't protect me, son. You robbed me of truth, of time, of trust. He wiped his eyes, his voice breaking. Please, Dad, give me one more chance. I set Maria's photo back on the mantel. No, you've had 10 years of chances. The words cut him deeper than any lecture could. He slumped in his chair, silent. His wife's eyes flashed anger, but she said nothing. I gathered the papers, slid them back into the briefcase, and snapped it shut. The sound echoed final. This isn't over, I said. Next time we sit at this table, it won't just be us. It will be the whole family. They deserve to know the truth too. Michael's head shot up. Don't humiliate me like that. Humiliation is living a lie, I replied. The truth will set you free, or it will bury you. That choice is yours. I stood, walked to the door, and opened it wide. Now go. He hesitated, then rose slowly. His wife stormed past me, muttering under her breath. Michael paused at the threshold, his face pale. Dad, please don't. I met his gaze, steady as steel. Sunday was for reckoning, next week is for judgment. He left without another word. The door closed behind him with a hollow thud. I leaned against it, my breath shaking, my heart heavy. The house was quiet again, too quiet. But beneath the silence something stirred, not relief, not closure, anticipation, because the real storm hadn't hit yet. The invitation went out on Monday. Not a written card, not a cheery call, just my voice on the phone, steady and deliberate. This Sunday, dinner at my house, everyone, no excuses. My brother Rosa hesitated on the line. Is everything all right, Dennis? No, I said, but it will be. By the end of the week, word had spread. Cousins, uncles, aunts, people I hadn't seen around my table in years agreed to come. They didn't ask why. Maybe they could hear it in my tone. Maybe they knew a storm was brewing. All week my house became a stage. I scrubbed the floors, dusted the mantel, polished the old oak table Maria had loved. Not for appearances, for respect. If the truth was going to be served, it deserved a clean plate. The folder of evidence sat in my briefcase, thicker now. I had added more screenshots, bank statements, and even the registrar's second confirmation. No record, no degree. The pile was undeniable. By Sunday evening, the house glowed with the smell of roast chicken and potatoes, Rosa's contribution. I hadn't wanted food at first, but she insisted. You can't summon family with empty plates, she said, so I let her cook. Maybe she was right. Maybe food softened blows, or maybe it made them harder to swallow. The doorbell rang at 6 sharp. First Rosa and her husband, then the cousins, then my sister-in-law with her teenagers. Laughter filled the entryway at first, coats piled on the rack, voices echoing. For a moment it almost felt like Christmas passed. Then Michael arrived, his wife at his side, her heels clicking on the hardwood like hammers on nails. He smiled too wide, shaking hands, hugging relatives, pretending nothing was wrong. But I saw the stiffness in his shoulders, the dart of his eyes toward me. I greeted them with a nod, nothing more. When everyone was seated, 12 faces around the long table, I stood at the head. Maria's photo rested on the mantel behind me, watching. I let the chatter fade. The silence settled heavy. Thank you for coming, I began. I didn't call you here for a holiday, I called you for the truth. Confused glances traded across the table. Michael shifted, forcing a laugh. Dad, maybe we should just eat first. No, I cut in. My voice carried more steel than I knew I had. We'll eat after. First you'll hear. I opened the briefcase. The sound of the latch clicking drew every eye. I pulled out the envelope, the registrar's denial, the screenshots, the bank statements, laying them out one by one. This, I said, pointing to the envelope, is 10 years of sacrifice. Payments I made so my son could finish college. This, I tapped the registrar's letter, is the truth. He never graduated, and these, I spread the photos, are where the money went. Gasps rippled through the room. Rosa's hand flew to her mouth. My nephew whispered, "No way." Michael's face went crimson. He pushed back his chair. Dad, what are you doing? What you should have done, I said, meeting his eyes, telling the truth. His wife jumped in, her voice sharp. This is an ambush. You can't humiliate us like this. I turned to her calmly. Humiliation comes from lies, not truth. The room buzzed with murmurs. My sister-in-law leaned forward, scanning the screenshots. Michael, is this Paris? You told us it was a work trip. Michael's jaw clenched. It was. Work, I said, on my dime. Rosa's husband, usually quiet, spoke up. Dennis, you paid all this alone? I nodded. Over 200,000, while my house crumbled, while my knees gave out, while my retirement vanished. I gave it gladly because I thought it was for his future. Instead, it funded his lifestyle. Michael slammed a hand on the table. Stop it, you don't understand. Then explain, I said, folding my arms. Explain to them. Explain to your family why their uncle, their brother, their friend has been living like a pauper while you toasted champagne in Paris. He opened his mouth, then closed it. His wife whispered urgently in his ear. His shoulders sagged. Finally, he muttered, I dropped out. Years ago, I couldn't handle the pressure. I didn't know how to tell you. The words hung in the air, heavy, final. My niece whispered, oh my God. Rosa's eyes filled with tears. Michael, your mother, she wanted. I know, he snapped, then crumbled. His hands covered his face. I know. Silence settled again, broken only by the creak of the old table. I spoke softly. You didn't just fail school, son, you failed trust. You turned me into your bank, your excuse, your safety net. And when I asked for honesty, you gave me lies. He looked up, eyes red. I was scared. So was I said. Every month I mailed those payments. I was scared. Scared I couldn't keep the lights on. Scared I couldn't fix the roof. Scared I'd fail you. And all the while you were failing me. The table was quiet, every face pale with the weight of it. His wife finally spoke, voice cold. Are you done, Dennis? You've made your point. I turned to her, steady. No, the point is this. The truth is out. No more secrets, no more lies. This family deserves better. I gathered the papers, stacked them neatly. From this day forward, the money stops. The lies stop. And if you want a relationship with me, Michael, it starts with respect, nothing less. He swallowed hard, his face a storm of anger and shame. His wife glared but said nothing more. I looked around the table, meeting each gaze. You came for dinner, I gave you the truth. Now you know, what you do with it is your choice. The room was frozen, a dozen breaths held tight. Then Rosa stood, quietly clearing plates. Let's eat, she said softly. Her voice trembled, but it was steady enough to break the spell. The family moved slowly, mechanically, as if food could absorb the shock. I sat back in my chair, exhausted. The reckoning had come. But as I watched Michael across the table, his face hardening, I knew this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. The house was quiet again once the last plate was cleared, the last chair scraped back, the last car pulled out of my driveway. My family had left in silence, their faces tight, their eyes heavy with something I hadn't seen in years, pity. Not pity for me, for him, Michael. He hadn't said goodbye. He hadn't even looked back. His wife had stormed out first, heels striking the floor like nails driven into wood, muttering words sharp enough to slice the air. He followed behind her, head down, fists clenched, his pride shattered in front of everyone. I should have felt relief. After all, the truth was out. I'd done what I promised myself I would do. No more lies, no more secrets, but instead of peace, I felt the weight of dread settle in my chest. Because when pride is cornered, it doesn't disappear, it fights. The next morning proved me right. I was sipping coffee on the porch when my neighbor, Paul, walked over with the newspaper folded under his arm. He handed it to me with a frown. Dennis, you seen this? My stomach dropped before I even opened it. There on the second page, a column. Local father turns on son, a private dispute goes public. My name wasn't mentioned, but it didn't need to be. The details were all there, payments, accusations, a dinner that ended in shame. The tone painted me as bitter, jealous, an old man unable to accept his son's success. Success. I read it twice, heat flooding my chest. Michael hadn't just left angry, he'd struck first. By noon, 3 more calls came, old friends, co-workers, even my pastor, asking if it was true if I'd humiliated my son in front of the family. Their voices were cautious, sympathetic, but beneath it all I heard the doubt. That night my phone buzzed with a message from Michael. No apology, no explanation, just 3 words, you started this. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Then I typed back, "No, son, you did." I didn't hit send, not yet, because part of me knew the fight had only just begun. The days that followed were a blur of whispers. At the grocery store, I caught glances, people pretending not to stare. At the hardware store, two men lowered their voices when I walked past. Word spreads fast in a small town. But the hardest part wasn't the whispers. It was the silence. The silence of family members who didn't call. The silence of friends who no longer dropped by for coffee. Silence can be louder than judgment. On Thursday, Rosa finally came. She sat at my kitchen table, her hands folded tight. "Dennis, he's telling everyone you lost your temper, that you made it up to cover your own mistakes." I laughed bitterly. Mistakes? My mistake was loving him too much. Her eyes softened. "I know, but people don't, and he's convincing." I thought of Michael's smile, the one that could charm a room, the same smile that had fooled me for years. "He's building a wall," I said quietly. "And he's using me as the foundation." She reached across the table, squeezed my hand. "What are you going to do?" I didn't answer, not because I didn't know, but because the truth was too heavy to say aloud. The backlash grew louder on Friday. Someone slipped a note under my door. "Deadbeat dad, get over it." No signature, just venom. I burned it in the sink, watching the paper curl to ash. That night I sat in the dark, the briefcase open in front of me. The evidence was still there, envelope, letters, screenshots, proof, undeniable proof. But proof means nothing when the story around it is stronger. Michael had his story, a father too proud, too bitter, too stuck in the past to accept his son's choices, and people were starting to believe it. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and whispered to the photo of Maria. "What do I do now?" The silence answered, as always, but in that silence something stirred, a memory, Maria's voice. "Truth doesn't defend itself. You have to stand for it." I opened my eyes, staring at the briefcase. Maybe that was it. Maybe it was time to go beyond family, beyond whispers. Maybe it was time to show the world the truth the way Michael had shown them lies. The thought both terrified and steadied me. Saturday morning the phone rang. It was Michael. His voice was tight, controlled. "Dad, listen to me. You embarrassed me once. Don't do it again." "Embarrassed you?" I said quietly. "I told the truth. You ruined me." "No, son, you ruined yourself." Silence. Then his voice hardened. "If you don't back down, I'll make sure you regret it. You think people are on your side now? Wait." The line went dead. I sat there, the receiver heavy in my hand, my pulse pounding in my ears. His words weren't just anger, they were a promise. I set the phone down slowly, walked to the window, and looked out at the street. The sky was darkening, clouds heavy with the threat of rain. And in that moment, I knew. The storm hadn't passed at the family table. It was only gathering strength. Sunday dinner had been the reckoning. Now came the backlash. And I would need more than truth to survive it. The rain came on Monday morning, steady and cold, streaking down the windows like the sky itself was tired of holding back. I sat at the kitchen table with the briefcase open in front of me, papers spread out once again. For weeks, these pages had been my burden. Now they would be my shield. Michael had made his move, whispers, gossip, an article twisting the truth into poison. He thought words could bury me. Maybe they could, but words can also reveal. And I had mine. By noon, I drove to the local community hall, the same place where fundraisers and town meetings were held. Rosa had spoken to a friend on the board, and they'd agreed to let me speak at the Thursday gathering. I wasn't a politician. I wasn't a preacher. I was just a father with a story, but maybe that was enough. The days crawled until Thursday. I spent every evening rehearsing, not the speech itself. I'm not the kind of man who memorizes lines, but the truth. How to lay it plain like a carpenter smoothing wood, honest, steady, real. When the night came, I walked into the hall with my briefcase under my arm. Dozens of neighbors filled the folding chairs, murmuring, glancing my way. Some looked curious, some skeptical, some already convinced of my guilt. I stepped to the front. My knees ached, but my voice was steady. "My name is Dennis Flores," I began. "Some of you know me, some of you only know the rumors. Tonight I want you to hear it from me." I opened the briefcase and pulled out the envelope. I held it high. 10 years of payments, $200,000. Money I worked for, money I bled for, money I gave gladly for my son's education. I laid it on the table. And this, I held up the registrar's letter, is the truth. He never graduated. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I spread the screenshots next, photos of champagne, trips, cars. This is where the money went, not tuition, not books, not a future, but a lifestyle. My voice caught for a moment, but I pressed on. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm not telling you this to shame him. I'm telling you because lies spread fast and truth needs a chance to catch up. I let the silence sit, then lowered my head. I'm a father. I loved my son. I still do, but love doesn't mean silence. Love means telling the truth even when it hurts. The room was quiet. Then from the back, Rosa's voice carried clear. He's telling you the truth. Others began to nod, to whisper. Some frowned, unsure. But the tide had shifted. They'd heard it from me, not through gossip. When I left the hall that night, people shook my hand. Some clapped my shoulder. A few avoided my eyes. That was fine. Truth doesn't win everyone at once, but it had taken its first breath in public. The next morning, Michael showed up at my door. No wife this time, just him, shoulders slumped, eyes red. "Dad," he said quietly, "you didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." He stepped inside, looked around the house as if seeing it for the first time. The cracked ceiling, the old furniture, the porch light still flickering. "I didn't realize how much you gave up," he murmured. "You didn't want to realize," I said. He winced. "You hate me now." I shook my head. "No, son, I hate the choices you made. There's a difference." We sat at the table, the same table where so much had been lost. He buried his face in his hands. "I don't know how to fix this." "You start with honesty," I said. "No more stories, no more lies. You admit what you did, and then you learn to live different." His voice cracked. "I don't know if I can." I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in years I saw not the man who lied, but the boy who once asked me how to throw a perfect spiral, who once cried when he scraped his knee, who once trusted me completely. "You can," I said softly, "but it's up to you." We sat in silence, the rain pattering outside. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was the first step. That evening I poured myself a glass of the good whiskey, the bottle I'd saved for years and finally opened after Christmas. I stood on the porch, rain washing the streets clean, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not pride, not victory, peace. I'd faced the storm and I was still standing. Maria's photo smiled from the mantel inside, steady as ever. I lifted the glass toward it. "We did it, love. He knows now. Maybe that's enough." I took a sip, the warmth spreading through me, and I knew tomorrow would bring new battles, bills to pay, whispers to ignore, maybe even wounds that would never fully heal. But tonight the air felt lighter. The truth had its day. And that was all I had ever wanted. If you've listened this far, thank you. Stories like mine aren't easy to tell, but maybe they remind us all of something. Truth matters. Sacrifice matters, and family, even when it breaks your heart, still matters. If you've ever faced something like this, if you've ever been betrayed by someone you love, I'd be honored if you'd share your story in the comments. I read everyone. And if this story moved you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for watching.